Hello there, Homeschool Nolan here to help you navigate learning in the digital age. It's Memorial Day weekend, and next weekend on June 6th will mark the 77th anniversary of D-Day. And today, I'd like to talk about the history lesson I gave this week on both Memorial Day and D-Day to the 8-year-olds in my homeschooling pod. Now, last year when I first started teaching history, my 8-year-old did express interest in learning about World War II. But I hesitated because I thought World War II might be too big and too complex a subject for 8-year-old. And World War II, of course, includes some subjects that may be difficult or upsetting, such as the Holocaust and the atomic bomb. But as Memorial Day approaches again this year, I realized that it is important that kids learn and understand that Memorial Day is about more than just a day for barbecues and going to the beach. I felt it was important that kids learn about remembering those who sacrificed on behalf of this country so that they could better appreciate the life that they are living today. Now, Memorial Day, of course, is a day for remembering all who have fought and died on behalf of this country, from the Revolutionary War to the recent wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. But we should remember D-Day in particular for a few reasons. First, as we approach the 77th anniversary of D-Day, there aren't many veterans from World War II who still remain, and it's becoming increasingly important to tell their story to the next generation. Back when I was growing up, just about everyone knew someone who had either fought or was directly involved in World War II. They have sometimes been referred to since as the greatest generation, who grew up during an economic depression and then went to war to save the world from fascism. And when they came home, they married, had children, and helped build America into a prosperous economic superpower. Their presence among us was always a reminder that freedom isn't free and that prosperity doesn't come without a sacrifice. And as this greatest generation continues to depart, it will be up to us parents and teachers to teach the next generation about how their sacrifices help shape the world we live in today. Their passing reminds me of a speech that Abraham Lincoln once gave as a young man, in which he referred to the founding fathers as a once hardy, brave, and patriotic, but now lamented and departed race of ancestors. He spoke those words in 1838, about 63 years after the Declaration of Independence. He knew that as the last of the founding fathers departed from this world, so would their living memory, and it would be up to future generations to only read or hear about them passed down from their ancestors. Lincoln was concerned that if we did not remember and appreciate the principles they laid down, the country could be torn apart, which is exactly what happened in his lifetime during the Civil War. Now, I don't think we're headed for a civil war today, but our kids do seem to be growing up in a country that is increasingly divided. And it's more important than ever now that our kids be aware and have knowledge of a time when in America, when young men from all over the country came together and fought for a common purpose in World War II. Now, World War II was, of course, fought in many places all around the world, in places like Iwo Jima, Kasserine Pass, and Guadalcanal. But D-Day was the climactic battle of World War II. It was the decisive turning point when the Allies began taking back the continent of Europe from Hitler. The young men who stormed those beaches were the ultimate examples of handling adversity while fighting for a just cause. Most of the men who landed on Normandy that day were aged 18 to 26. And unlike the soldiers on the other side, they did not grow up to be warriors. As Ambrose wrote in his book, D-Day, June 6, 1944, it is the young men born into the false prosperity of the 1920s and brought up in the bitter realities of the Depression of the 1930s that this book is about. The literature they read as youngsters was anti-war, cynical, portraying patriots as suckers, slackers as heroes. None of them wanted to be part of another war. They wanted to be throwing baseballs, not hand grenades, shooting .22s at rabbits, not M1s at other young men. But when the test came, when freedom had to be fought for or abandoned, they fought. They were soldiers of democracy. They were the men of D-Day, and to them, we owe our freedom. So when those young men landed on those beaches, they faced a hail of machine gun fire, landmines, and almost certain death. Yet they kept moving forward. When one man fell, another would take his place. There were no safe spaces on that beach where they could hide. They did not fight real fascism and racism by hiding behind a keyboard and posting on social media. They did it by taking up arms and advancing in the face of real danger. They had been training hard for over 2 years for that day, and many of them were killed as soon as they landed on that beach. Yet slowly but surely, they began taking back the continent of Europe and showed the true meaning of using force for liberation rather than for conquest. Not only did these young men teach us the true meaning of courage in the face of adversity, but they also remind us today that America does not have to be perfect to be a force for good. You see, the America they were fighting for in 1944 was by no means a perfect place. Black Americans were still segregated in the South and denied basic civil rights. Innocent Americans of Japanese descent were thrown into concentration camps. Yet both young black men and young Asian American men fought on behalf of this country in World War II. And I don't think anyone today would disagree that the world became a much better place with the United States and her allies prevailing against Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan. And as an Asian American myself, I'm well aware of the racial prejudice that's always existed in this country and around the world. But I'm also aware that were it not for the United States in World War II, I probably would be speaking Japanese or German today and living a very different life. So how did I teach D-Day to 8-year-old kids? Well, once again, I found a pretty good book from the Who HQ series called What Was D-Day, which I found to be just right for 8-year-old homeschoolers. The book does a pretty good job telling the story of D-Day, including the background of why the war was fought. But in addition to reading this book, I also showed the kids video clips of President Ronald Reagan's poignant and moving address to D-Day veterans on the 40th anniversary of D-Day back in 1984. June 6, 1984 was a particularly special anniversary because it was probably the last time many of the D-Day veterans were still alive and able to come together to remember. In closing his speech, President Reagan reminded both current and future generations of why we remember D-Day when he spoke, "We will always remember. We will always be proud. We will always be prepared so we may always be free." Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.